Today I want to share some thoughts about false balance in climate argument, also known as false equivalence. This is the belief that there are two equal sides to every issue, and both sides must be given equal voice. While this may be true when things are a matter of opinion, it's not always the case, and we need to understand the difference. We see this in climate argument when opinion is treated the same as scientific evidence, and it's just wrong. Good journalists must offer balance in their reporting. So, in climate argument, they have to give equal time to the skeptic and the expert. In most cases, the skeptic is running on gut feeling. Meanwhile, the expert has spent years of study and work to fully understand the issue. They offer facts that have stood up to intense scrutiny by qualified specialists. This is the gold standard of factual argument. While false balance is really entertaining, it doesn't paint a very honest picture. Giving equal time creates an impression that there is a debate among equally qualified experts. There are equal numbers on both sides. And the question is still open for debate. It takes work to unravel this mess and make sense of it all. So often, we just don't bother. The implications of false balance in climate argument are far-reaching and very dangerous. By creating the impression that the science is still in question, all we have to do is argue. We ignore the very real threat. Instead, we focus all of our energy on a riveting political dogfight. We're fiddling while Rome burns. So today I want to consider one of the most common arguments offered to support false balance. The idea that it only takes one scientist to make new discovery that upsets everything we know. And this has happened. But when one lonely voice upsets the apple cart, they offer real proof. The scientific community studied the data and finally accepts the discovery. This is peer review. To date in climate work, the 3% of skeptics could not give any real evidence for their case, despite all the noise to the contrary. In the process, they've made actual math errors, cherry-picked data, or use a flawed peer review process, only checking their work with folks that agree with their findings in the first place. One example people often cite when pushing to give equal airtime to the contrary voice is the case of Galileo. They pushed the idea that Galileo was all alone and against all odds insisted that the sun is the center of the solar system. As the myth goes, all the other scientists passionately opposed him and were finally proven wrong. Silly old scientists, those elites. Scientific consensus is meaningless. What do scientists really know anyway? After all, the ivory tower isn't the real world. I've heard all this so often, I felt compelled to do a bit of research on Galileo. The historical record actually doesn't support the myth. In fact, most of the scientific community of the day agreed with Galileo. The fierce opposition actually came from the church, who believed that his idea was heresy. Back in the 1600s, being charged with heresy meant inquisition, torture, and burning at the stake. So Galileo's scientific pals begged him to be careful and wear themselves mute out of fear of the Inquisition. Early in his conflict with the church, Galileo agreed to not publish any scientific work on his theory. But he found a loophole, and he wrote a story about it instead. Unfortunately, the story mocked the Pope, who got really angry. In the end, Galileo faced Inquisition and was put under house arrest for the rest of his life. None of this makes the case for the lonely voice facing fierce opposition from his peers who was finally proven right. As the skeptics would have it, the primary reason why they should be given equal airtime. Instead, it's actually a story of a stubborn cuss speaking truth to power. Ironically, this is more like Greta Thunberg than like a climate skeptic. The demand for false balance is a symptom of climate grief bargaining. Putting aside the fact that trolls often use false balance as a tactic, The average person talking about balance in climate argument is just trying to understand a very complex issue. We need to listen patiently. We need to share our common concerns, our fears for our livelihood, for our families, and for the future. Once we find common ground, we can work together on real solutions. Perhaps at that point, we can have a discussion about false balance, peer review, and the merits of rigorous scientific process. But for the most part, that really isn't the issue. What we really need to focus on is working together to fix the problem. I'd love to hear your thoughts about false balance and climate argument. Feel free to comment below or pop on over to nodalcore.com, browse around, and leave your comments there. Thanks for spending a few moments with me. Until next time.